It was a Tuesday, 3:14 p.m. Scarlett Vance was looking at a blueprint when the call came, and with it the voice of the woman who had replaced her. But it wasn't the gloating that broke the silence of her new life. It was the two words that came next. Street garbage. The woman, her ex-husband's new life, had called her street garbage. What neither of them knew, that garbage was about to decide the fate of their $2 billion future. The rain against the glass of her Brooklyn Heights apartment was the only sound Scarlett Vance had permitted herself for the last hour. It was a soft, percussive static, a grey veil drawn between her and the hard, glittering skyline of Manhattan across the river. Her apartment was a study in deliberate quiet. Polished concrete floors, warm walnut bookcases, and furniture chosen for its clean lines and lack of memory. It was the opposite of the cavernous, art-filled Upper East Side penthouse she had shared with Dean Mercer for 20 years. This space was hers. It was monastic, healing, and, if she was honest, lonely. She was sketching, a community center in Red Hook, all reclaimed timber and glass. Her fingers, smudged with graphite, moved with a forgotten confidence. This was what she did before Dean, before Mercer Developments, before her own brilliance had been absorbed, processed, and repackaged as his. At 42, Scarlett was rebuilding a life from the blueprints he'd thought he'd burned. The phone vibrated on the heavy oak table. A private number. She almost ignored it. Her circle was small now. Her foundation director, her sister, and two old friends who had survived the blast radius of her divorce. But a private number often meant an architect, a contractor. She answered, tapping the speakerphone icon. Scarlett Vance. A pause, then a voice like cold honey. Scarlett, I didn't think you'd pick up. Scarlett's pencil stopped. The graphite tip snapped. She knew the voice. She had only heard it once in person, in a courtroom hallway, but she had replayed it 1,000 times in her darkest hours. Ophelia Stone. The 28-year-old curator Dean had met at Art Basel, who had moved into the penthouse before the ink was dry on the divorce settlement. What do you want, Ophelia? Scarlett's voice was flat, devoid of the tremor that had suddenly shot through her hands. Oh, I was thinking about you, Ophelia purred, a blatant, saccharine lie. I'm looking at the models for the Hudson Spire. Dean is here. He's on a call with the Tokyo investors. It's all happening. The final funding tranche, the Green Star certification. It's all locked. It's his masterpiece. Scarlett closed her eyes. The Hudson Spire, Dean's legacy project. A $2.7 billion 90-story, zero-carbon monument to his own ego. A project she had first sketched on a cocktail napkin in 2010, dreaming of a building that breathed. I'm happy for him, Scarlett said, each word a piece of ice. Ophelia laughed, a light tinkling sound that grated on Scarlett's nerves. Are you? Are you really? It's funny. He's so happy now. Truly, we were just saying, it's amazing what happens when you cut out the dead weight, when you're finally free of the past. Scarlett's jaw tightened. If you call just to gloat, you're wasting your time. I have work to do. Work? Ophelia's voice hardened, the velvet slipping to reveal the steel beneath. Her insecurity was a tangible thing, a desperate need to not just win but to crush. You mean your little doodles? Dean told me all about your little projects. He's a titan, Scarlett. He's changing the skyline. And you, what are you really? Scarlett refused to be drawn. Goodbye, Ophelia. He deserves to be free of you. Ophelia's voice rose, cracking with a sudden, venomous spite. He's a genius, and you were just the help. You're nothing. You're street garbage he finally scraped off his shoe. Click. The dial tone hummed in the silent apartment. The rain lashed the glass. Scarlett stood, perfectly still. She did not cry. Crying was a luxury she'd renounced during the divorce. Instead, a cold, familiar numbness crept into her hands, making them heavy. Street garbage. The words were so crude, so base, they were designed to annihilate her. To reduce her 20 years of partnership, of intellectual labor, of love and sacrifice into filth. It was the ultimate expression of the power imbalance. Ophelia, with Dean's power behind her, could call from his kingdom and throw trash into Scarlett's quiet refuge. Scarlett walked to the window, resting her forehead against the cool glass. The city across the river seemed to mock her. Dean's city. He was winning. He had the company, the penthouse, the new wife, and now his masterpiece. And she was garbage. Her phone vibrated again. This time she looked. It was an email marked urgent from Arthur Finch, Director, eternafoundation.org, subject, final review, Hudson Spire Project, Mercer Developments. Scarlett, the final prospectus for the Hudson Spire just landed. This is for the third stage Green Star funding, the 500 minutes tranche. It's the last hurdle for them. I know the name. I know the history. But the project looks flawless on paper. Perfect ESG scores, zero carbon sourcing, innovative water recycling. It's exactly what the foundation was built to fund. We need your final sign-off by Friday, 5 p.m. The board is unanimous in favor, but your chair vote is, as always, the final word. Let me know if you need me to dig deeper. Best Arthur Scarlett read the email once, then twice. The Eterna Foundation, her grandmother's legacy. A quiet, immensely powerful environmental trust that funded the world's most ambitious green projects. Its involvement was the ultimate stamp of approval, the one thing that unlocked the rest of the institutional money. Dean, in his arrogance, had never paid attention to her family. He knew she had a little foundation. He had no idea of its scale. He would have dealt with Arthur, with the board. He would never, in a million years, know that the final chair vote belonged to the woman his mistress had just called street garbage. The numbness in her hands receded, replaced by a sudden glacial cold. She looked at the email. She looked at the glittering, hostile skyline. "Dig deeper, Arthur," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Dig everywhere." The word garbage echoed. It followed her as she paced the concrete floor, as she tried to return to her sketch and saw only a child's scrawl. It settled in her chest, a familiar, heavy ache. It was the word Dean had never used but had always implied. She was the baggage, the past, the anchor. Scarlett poured a glass of water, her hand shaking so slightly it was almost impertypable. She was back in the lawyer's office 3 years ago. A room of polished mahogany and suffocating silence. Dean wasn't there, of course. He'd sent his attack dog, a man whose suit probably cost more than her first car. "Dean is prepared to be generous, Scarlett," the lawyer Blake Donovan had said, steepling his fingers. "He recognizes your contributions to his early success." "My contributions," Scarlett had whispered, hollowed out from weeks of crying. "I was his partner. I designed the Teterboro complex. I sourced the sustainable materials for the Omni Tower. My name, your name," Donovan cut in, his voice soft, "is not on the letterhead. You were a spouse. You were paid a handsome salary as a consultant, which, by the way, was more than generous." "He's building a house in Amagansett," she said, the words feeling like glass in her throat. "For her. I saw the blueprints. They were on his server. The Amagansett property is a private asset, purchased post-separation. He's building it from my designs," she finally spat out. "The ones I did for our beach house, the one we were supposed to build together. He's giving her my house." Donovan had given her a look of profound, chilling pity. "Ms. Vance, Dean is offering $20 million. Tax-free. Be smart. Do not fight him on this. You will not win. He is Mercer Developments. You were his wife. Take the deal. Start over. Buy a nice apartment in Brooklyn." She had taken the deal, not because she was afraid, but because she was broken. The fight wasn't in her. He had systematically, over 2 decades, hollowed her out, convincing her that her ideas were nothing without his execution. He was the big-picture visionary. She was just the nuts and bolts girl. And the most painful part, she had believed him. She walked back to her desk, the memory fading. She had taken the 20 million, and combined with the modest inheritance from her grandmother, she had vanished. She'd reverted to her maiden name, Vance, and taken her seat as the anonymous controlling chair of the Eterna Foundation. It was the one thing he could not touch. Her grandmother, a shrewd, formidable woman, had structured the trust that way. Its power was quiet, academic, and absolute. Street garbage. Ophelia's insult wasn't just spite. It was Dean's narrative, the story he had to tell himself and his new partner to justify the theft. To justify erasing his wife, he had to believe she was worthless. Scarlett opened the Hudson Spire prospectus on her monitor. It was a beautiful document, 300 pages of sleek renderings, complex environmental impact statements, and financial projections that were, frankly, staggering. And there on page 8 was the centerpiece, the biomimetic facade. A revolutionary, self-regulating skin for the building, using algorithmic shutters to track the sun, minimizing heat gain and maximizing light. It would cut the building's HVAC load by 40%. Scarlett's breath hitched. She was looking at a direct, digitized copy of a sketch she had made on a flight to Singapore in 2014. They had been on their way to a materials conference. Dean had been sleeping, his head on her shoulder, and she'd been struck by the way a pine cone opens and closes. She'd spent the whole flight sketching, calculating angles, theorizing a mechanical skin. When they landed, she'd shown him. He'd kissed her, his eyes electric. My brilliant girl. This is it. This is the future. My brilliant girl. Now, in the prospectus, the design was credited to the Mercer Developments Innovation Lab, Dean Mercer. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it was almost clarifying. This wasn't just a stolen idea, it was a stolen soul. He was building his $2.7 billion monument on her genius, and Ophelia was calling her garbage. The phone rang again. Arthur. Scarlett, he said, his voice clipped. You were right to make me dig. I've got something. It's thin, but it's there. Go on, she said, her voice a low hum. The timber, the primary structural material. It's all green source certified, coming from a supplier called Viridian Woods, LLC. They claim to be a sustainable forestry co-op in Oregon. And they're not. Well, that's the thing. They are. They exist. Their paperwork is perfect. Too perfect. But I ran a check on their corporate registration. Viridian Woods was incorporated 18 months ago. Their CEO, a Grant Keller, doesn't seem to exist on LinkedIn, in financial media, anywhere. And the holding company that financed them? It's registered in Delaware with a single anonymous director. It's a shell, Scarlett said. It was a classic Dean move. Create a supplier from scratch, control the pricing, and bake in a massive hidden profit margin. During their marriage, she had been the one to warn him against it. It's too risky, Dean. It's fraud. He'd just smiled. It's just smart business, honey. It's a shell, Arthur agreed. But that's not the problem. Not our problem, anyway. The problem is, if the company is fake, the source might be too. If that timber isn't coming from Oregon, where is it coming from? Scarlett looked at the rendering of the spire, so tall and proud. It was a lie, from its skin to its bones. I know a guy, Scarlett said, her mind already moving. An environmental forensics analyst in Brazil, Dr. Aris. He tracks illegal logging in the Amazon. Send him the Viridian Woods S1. Tell him I need to know where the wood is really from. And Arthur, yes? Tell him it's a matter of foundation integrity, and that I'm prepared to pay him and his entire village for his trouble. She hung up. The power imbalance that had defined her life for 2 decades suddenly felt different. It was a complex machine, and she was finally seeing the gears. Dean thought he was playing a game of poker, holding all the cards. He had no idea he was playing chess, and he'd just put his king in check by insulting the queen. For 2 days, Scarlett lived inside the Hudson Spire. She shut off her phone, ignored the rain, and let the Red Hook Community Center blueprint sit untouched. She existed on black coffee and a cold, simmering rage that had finally burned through the fog of her grief. She absorbed the 300-page prospectus not as an ex-wife, but as the architect she had been trained to be. She read it with a critical, unforgiving eye, searching for the flaws Dean, in his arrogance, would have assumed no one would be smart enough to find. He had always underestimated her. It had been his greatest tool of control, and it was about to become his greatest liability. The project was ambitious. She had to give him that. It was a masterpiece of greenwashing. The buzzwords were all there: zero carbon, sustainable, biomimetic, grey water, geothermal. He was selling a narrative, and the investors, desperate to pour money into ESG-compliant funds, were eating it up. The Eterna Foundation's Green Star was the final critical piece. Without it, the project's ethical high ground vanished, and the whole fragile tower of funding would collapse. She saw herself on every page. Page 45. The geothermal heat sink system. An idea she'd pitched for a hospital in Dubai, one Dean had dismissed as too academic and unscalable. Here it was, scaled up and presented as his own. Page 112. The atmospheric water capture system for the rooftop garden. Her thesis project from Columbia, 1999. He hadn't just stolen her pinecone sketch. He had plundered the entire archive of her mind. He had taken 20 years of her intellectual property, the late-night conversations, the dinner-table sketches, the ideas she had given him freely, as a partner, as a wife, and built a monument to himself. And Ophelia's words rang in her ears. He's a genius. The sheer, staggering arrogance of it was what choked her. He hadn't just left his wife, he had looted her. He had convinced her she was nothing, all while methodically emptying her pockets. Her laptop chimed, a secure message from Arthur, heard back from Aris in Brazil. It's bad. Attached was a 40-page report, dense with satellite imagery, shipping manifests and chemical analysis. Dr. Aris was thorough. Subject: Analysis of Viridian Woods LLC, para-rainforest deforestation. Ms. Vance, the timber sourced by Viridian Woods is not Douglas fir from Oregon. The manifests are forgeries. The chemical signature and isotopic analysis of the samples we acquired from their staging port in Belém confirm it. This is Ipe and Kumaru, ironwood. It's coming from protected lands in the state of Pará. They aren't just logging, they're clear-cutting. The satellite images show a new, illegal road pushed 30 kilometers into the Jamanxim National Forest. This is financing a criminal operation. The local co-op they claim to be working with is a front for a group known for violence and displacing indigenous tribes. This Viridian Woods isn't just a shell company for profit. It's a laundry for illegally poached old-growth timber. The Hudson Spire's sustainable frame is being built from the heart of the Amazon. Whatever this project is, Ms. Vance, it is not green. It is blood red. Scarlett pushed back from her desk, her chair scraping loudly in the silent apartment. She felt dizzy, sick. This wasn't a shortcut. This wasn't just smart business. This was a catastrophic criminal lie. This was the man she had loved. The moral complexity of her situation was suddenly, brutally simple. This was no longer about a spiteful phone call or stolen ideas. It wasn't about her broken heart or Ophelia's cruelty. This was the Eterna Foundation's entire reason for existing. Her grandmother had founded it to stop exactly this. To fight the beautiful, charismatic liars who would burn the world for profit and call it progress. The phone call. Street garbage. It was the catalyst. It was the grain of sand in the oyster. Ophelia's stupid, cruel little power play had been the one thing that made Scarlett look deeper. Dean, in his insulated world of yes-men and fawning new lovers, had forgotten that the nuts and bolts girl was the only one who knew how to take the machine apart. She sat at her desk for a long time, watching the lights of Manhattan flicker on as the sun set. The Hudson spire in her mind was already crumbling. She began to type. It was not a long email. It was precise, cold, and factual. She attached Dr. Aris's report, the satellite photos, the shipping manifests. She cited Section 4, Clause 12 of the Eterna Charter. Zero tolerance for fraudulent environmental impact statements or criminal sourcing. To Arthur Finch, the Eterna Foundation Board of Directors. Subject, Final vote. Hudson Spire Project, Mercer Developments. Board members, pursuant to my review, I am exercising my chair vote to reject the Hudson Spire project for Green Star certification and all associated funding tranches. The decision is immediate, final, and non-negotiable. The attached forensic report from Dr. Aris outlines a catastrophic and fraudulent breach of our charter. Mercer Developments has not engaged in a materials variance. They have built their entire project on a criminal enterprise, sourcing illegally logged timber from protected Amazonian rainforest. The Foundation's legal team is to engage immediately, both to sever all ties and to forward this report to the Department of Justice and the appropriate international tribunals. We will not be party to this. We will, in fact, be the ones to expose it. Scarlett A. Vance Chair, the Eterna Foundation. She hit send. The silence in the apartment was absolute. The power imbalance that had crushed her for years hadn't just shifted, it had shattered. She had not just cancelled his project. She had, very quietly, just declared war. The explosion was silent. For 24 hours, the only sound was the rain and the hum of Scarlett's refrigerator. She went to her yoga class. She bought groceries. She answered 2 emails about the Red Hook Center. She was an expert in functioning while the world ended. She'd done it every day for the last 3 years. She was waiting for the shockwave. It arrived at 9:17 a.m. on Thursday. Her phone didn't ring. Her laptop chimed. Arthur was calling on a secure video line. She answered. His face, usually a mask of academic calm, was pale. "Scarlett," he breathed. "All hell has broken loose." "I expected it would," she said, sipping her coffee. "No, you don't understand. The moment our legal letter hit Mercer's inbox, the Tokyo investors, the ones he was on the phone with, they got wind of it. They've pulled their $1.5 billion line of credit." The Abu Dhabi Sovereign Fund followed an hour later. The Times has the story. The Journal has the story. Mercer's $2. 7B Spire collapses amid greenwashing scandal. They're citing us. An unnamed ethics foundation pulled the certification. Scarlett nodded, her face impassive. "Good. The truth is out." Arthur ran a hand over his bald head. "Scarlett, Dean Mercer is on a warpath. He's calling everyone. He's calling senators. He's calling the mayor. He's trying to find out who the chair of Eterna is. He thinks it's some academic rival. He is screaming at our general counsel that he's going to sue us into oblivion for tortious interference." "He can't," Scarlett said simply. "Our case is ironclad. The truth is an absolute defense. He's the one who committed fraud. I know that. You know that. But he's cornered, and he's lashing out. And Ophelia Stone, God, Scarlett. She's been calling our front desk, screaming. She called my assistant a worthless little secretary. She's unhinged. Street garbage." Scarlett almost smiled. "People get loud when they're falling, Arthur. Let them. We did our job." "There's more," Arthur said, his voice dropping. "The DOJ. They're not just looking into it. They've opened a criminal investigation into Mercer Developments, into Viridian Woods, into Dean Mercer. This isn't just about the project collapsing, Scarlett. This is about jail time." The coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. This was further than she had intended. Her goal had been to stop the lie, to stop her work from being used to fund deforestation. She had wanted to reclaim her power. She had not consciously set out to imprison him. The moral complexity of her decision suddenly gained a new, sharp edge. She had been exacting justice. But the line between justice and revenge, she realized, was terrifyingly thin. Had she done this because of the Amazon or because of Amagansett? Had she torpedoed his life because of the timber or because he had called her garbage? Yes, a small, cold voice said inside her. Yes, to all of it. And she found she could live with that. He had built his kingdom on rotten foundations. It wasn't her fault the whole thing collapsed when she pointed it out. "Keep me apprised of the legal situation," she said, her voice steady. "And Arthur, give your assistant a bonus, a big one." She ended the call. The apartment was too quiet. The silence was too loud. She had to get out. She grabbed her raincoat and for the first time in 3 years walked across the Brooklyn Bridge toward Manhattan. She needed to see the city he was trying to buy. She walked through the financial district, past the skyscrapers, the temples of money and power. Men in dark suits rushed past her, shouting into phones. They all looked like Dean. They all had that same desperate, hungry energy, that same hollowness in their eyes. She found herself at the Hudson Yards, not far from where the spire was meant to be. The site was just a hole in the ground right now, a massive concrete-lined scar surrounded by blue fencing. "Mercer Developments," the sign screamed. "The future of sustainability." A few news vans were already there. A reporter was talking to a camera. A few construction workers stood nearby, smoking, their faces grim. They were the ones who had just lost their jobs. This was the part she hadn't wanted to think about. The collateral damage. The real people, the electricians, the ironworkers, the plumbers who were caught in the blast radius of Dean's ego and her retribution. A new, complicated guilt twisted in her stomach. "It's a damn shame," a voice said beside her. A man in a hard hat, his face weathered. "Supposed to be 2 years of work on that site. Now, who knows?" "What happened?" Scarlett asked, pulling her collar tight. "You kiddin'? Some greeny-weeny foundation pulled the plug. Found something wrong with the wood." He snorted. "Like any of these buildings are clean. It's all a racket. But this guy, Mercer, he must have pissed off the wrong person." Scarlett stared at the sign. Pissed off the wrong person. "Yeah," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "I think he did." She turned and walked away from the site, the shouts of the reporters and the anger of the workers fading behind her. The city felt different now. It was no longer his. It felt contested. As she reached the street corner, her phone, the one she'd left on, buzzed. A text from Dean. "I know it was you. You and your goddamn grandmother's bird-watching club. I'm going to destroy you, Scarlett. I'm going to take everything." A hollow threat from a hollow man. He was already destroyed. He just didn't know it yet. A second text came, immediately after, from Ophelia. "You're a dead woman. You're a jealous, pathetic, barren old witch. You couldn't keep him, and now you're trying to ruin him. I hope you die." Scarlett looked at the message, at the raw, impotent rage. This was the woman who had pitied her. This was the woman who had called her garbage. She deleted both texts without replying, hailed a cab, and went home. The storm had broken. Now, she just had to wait for the flood. The call came that evening. Scarlett was making tea, the Financial Times spread open on her counter. The headline was brutal: "Mercer's Spire, a 2.7B house of cards." The article detailed with savage precision the forged manifests and the shell company Viridian Woods. Dr. Aris's report was now public. The phone rang. Private number. Scarlett felt a jolt of adrenaline, but her hand was steady. She picked it up. "Scarlett Vance." It wasn't Dean. It was a sob, a raw, gulping, hysterical sound. "Bitch! You fucking bitch!" Ophelia, all the manufactured cool, the honeyed purr, the bored superiority, it was all gone, burned away. What was left was the raw, terrified 28-year-old animal underneath. "What did you do?" Ophelia shrieked, her voice echoing as if she were pacing a large, empty room. "The penthouse. What did you do? The accounts are frozen. The accounts. Blake Donovan just called. Dean's lawyer. He said the feds. They're seizing assets." Scarlett was silent, listening to the pure, distilled panic of a woman who had built her life on a man only to discover the man was made of sand. "You did this!" Ophelia screamed. "You couldn't stand that he was happy. You couldn't stand that he chose me. You're jealous." The word was so small, so juvenile, it was almost laughable. Jealous. Scarlett looked around her quiet, peaceful apartment, at her own work, her own name, her own foundation. "Ophelia," Scarlett said, her voice calm and cold as a riverstone. "This has nothing to do with jealousy. This has nothing to do with you. This has to do with forged shipping manifests and the illegal deforestation of a national park." "Who gives a shit about trees?" Ophelia howled. "This is his life. This is my life. They're taking the cars. They're at the house in Amagansett. My house. You did this to me." My house. There it was. The house built from Scarlett's stolen dreams. The symbol of everything. "It was never your house, Ophelia," Scarlett said, the words cutting. "It was never even his house. It was my design, just like the spire, just like the bio-facade, just like the water recycling system. You haven't been living his life. You've been living in the ghost of mine." A sharp, ragged intake of breath on the other end. Silence. The truth had landed, and it had hit hard. Ophelia's entire identity was built on being the new Scarlett, the better Scarlett. The idea that she was just an aftermarket knockoff living in a world built by the woman she despised was an existential bomb. You're lying," Ophelia whispered, but the conviction was gone. The hysteria had been punctured, leaving a leaking balloon of self-doubt. Dean is the genius. He told me." "He told you what he needed you to believe," Scarlett said, feeling a sudden, strange wave of pity. It was so tiring being a tool for Dean Mercer's ego. She had done it for 20 years. Ophelia had only lasted 3. He needed a beautiful young audience. He needed someone who wouldn't question the big picture. "He told you I was nuts and bolts. He told you I was garbage. Did you ever once stop to think about who designed the machine?" You? Ophelia was crying again, but it was a different sound. Not rage. It was the sound of collapse. He's gone. He left. He packed a bag and he left. He said he had to go to Zurich. He told me to handle the lawyers. He's gone, Scarlett. He left me." Of course he did. The classic narcissistic pivot. The second the adoration soured, the second the reflection turned ugly, Dean was gone. He had left Scarlett to face the lawyers in the divorce. He had left Ophelia to face the feds. "He's not in Zurich, Ophelia," Scarlett said, walking to her window. The city was dark. "He's running, but they'll find him. This isn't a marital dispute. This is a federal crime. What do I do?" The question was a child's wail. "What am I supposed to do? My name is on accounts, on the Amagansett deed. Oh God, am I in trouble?" "Yes," Scarlett said with no pleasure at all. "You are. You tied your life to a fraud. You wanted the penthouse and the parties. You wanted to be Mrs. Mercer. Well, this is what it costs. Please, Scarlett, please. You can stop this. Call them. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you were just angry. Please, I'll do anything. I'll give you the house." Scarlett closed her eyes. The power imbalance was now a grotesque inversion. The woman who had 72 hours ago called her street garbage was now begging her for salvation, offering to give her the very thing that had been stolen. "It's not my house, Ophelia, and I can't stop this. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than Dean. This is the machine. You wanted to be a part of it. Now you are." You garbage!" Ophelia spat, one last pathetic attempt at defiance. "Yes," Scarlett said, and she felt the last shackle of that word break and fall away. "I am, and I'm the one taking out the trash. Goodbye, Ophelia." She hung up. She blocked the number. The phone immediately rang again. A different number, one she knew by heart, though she hadn't dialed it in 3 years. Dean. He wasn't in Zurich. He was calling, and he was about to learn the difference between a partner and a victim. She let it ring. 4 times. 5. She let him sit in the silence, stewing in the panic she knew he must be feeling. The panic of a man who has never, not once in his adult life, faced a consequence he couldn't buy, charm, or bully his way out of. On the 6th ring, she answered. She did not speak. A ragged breath. "Scarlett." His voice. Not the booming, charismatic baritone of the boardroom. Not the seductive, confident tenor he used at galas. This was a voice she'd never heard before. It was thin. It was ragged. It was afraid. "You have to fix this," he said. Not, "Hello." Not, "How are you?" A command. Even in desperation, he was still a king ordering a servant. "Fix what, Dean?" she asked, her voice an arctic calm. This, the foundation, the timber. It's a misunderstanding. It's a materials variance, Scarlett. You know how this works. A shortcut. You can't do this." "I didn't do anything, Dean," she said, walking to her bookcase, tracing the spine of a book on architectural ethics. "I just read the fine print, something you never bothered to do. You built a zero-carbon tower out of poached Amazonian ironwood. You lied." "A lie?" He was trying to build momentum to find his old bluster. "It's business. It's how the game is played. The goddamn project is carbon neutral. It balances out. Who cares where the goddamn trees come from? This is my legacy. This is our legacy, Scar. Our legacy." The audacity of it, the sheer, profound, narcissistic gall was breathtaking. He had stolen her work, erased her name, replaced her, and now, standing on the precipice, he was trying to pull her back in, to make her complicit. "Don't," she said, her voice dropping into a deadly soft register. "Don't you dare say our. You gave up the right to that word when you put your name on my designs. You gave it up when you built my house for her. And you burned it to the ground when you had her call me. And you know what she called me. A beat of heavy, static-filled silence. He knew. Of course he knew. He had probably given her the line. That was Ophelia," he stammered, deflecting. "She's emotional. She doesn't know you. And you do, Dean, after everything you gave me. After the divorce. The generous settlement you had Blake Donovan bully me into. After 20 years you're going to ruin me. You're going to ruin me over trees?" There it was, the transactional heart of him. "I paid you, so you owe me silence." He saw the 20 million not as severance for a 2-decade partnership, but as a gag order. "You gave me nothing, Dean," she said, the words as clear and hard as diamonds. "I earned that money. That was severance pay for being your co-founder, your chief architect, your strategist, and your ghostwriter for half my life. The ideas in that proposal? The biofacade? The geothermal sink? The water system? That was my work. That was my thesis. That was my sketch on the plane to Singapore." The silence on the other end was no longer just silence. It was a vacuum. She had spoken the truth, the one thing they had never, ever been allowed to acknowledge. "You stole my life's work," she continued, her voice gaining a low, shaking power. "You packaged it. You put a bow on it. And you sold it as your own genius. And you let your child call me garbage after you had already picked my entire life clean. Scarlett, he whispered. He sounded broken. The bluster was gone. The fear was gone. All that was left was the hollow man. What do you want? It was the question she had been waiting for. The final, desperate plea of a man who believes everything has a price. What do you want? More money? The penthouse? Do you want me to leave her? She thought of the construction worker at the site. She thought of the ravaged rainforest. She thought of her small, beautiful community center in Red Hook, the one she was building with honest materials. I want you to know, she said very slowly. I want you to sit in whatever dark room you're hiding in, and I want you to know that I know. I want you to look at the smoking ruins of your $2 billion legacy and know that the street garbage was the only thing holding the whole rotten structure up. Scarlett, please, he begged, a pathetic, broken sound. Please don't do this. I'm sorry. It was the first time he had said that word to her. Sorry. But it was too late. It was a sorry for being caught, not for the crime. It's not me doing this, Dean. It's you. You did this the moment you decided to lie. You lied to the wrong person. She hung up the phone, and for the first time in 3 years, she didn't feel broken. She didn't feel angry. She didn't even feel victorious. She just felt quiet. The old, aching power imbalance had finally, irrevocably tipped. It wasn't that she was on top. It was that she was finally, blessedly, off the scale entirely. She was free. The fallout was, as Arthur had predicted, immense. Dean's flight to Zurich was, in fact, a panicked drive to a private airfield in Teterboro. He was apprehended by federal agents before his Gulfstream's wheels even left the tarmac. The photo of Dean Mercer, the titan of industry, the visionary, in handcuffs, his bespoke suit rumpled, his face a mask of grey disbelief, was on the cover of every paper. Mercer indicted. Fraud, conspiracy, money laundering. Ophelia, it turned out, had been more than just a girlfriend. Dean, in his paranoid arrogance, had made her a signatory on the Viridian Woods accounts, believing she was too vapid to ever understand what she was signing. She was now a material witness, her life upended. Her last public sighting was of her leaving a federal building, draped in a coat, her face hidden as reporters shouted questions. She had traded the penthouse for a lawyer's retainer. But the media narrative was a hydra, and a new head was turning towards Scarlett. An ambitious young journalist from the New York Times, a man named Blake Donovan, no relation to Dean's lawyer, had somehow connected the dots. He'd traced the Eterna Foundation's incorporation back to Scarlett's grandmother, and from there, to her. The story was too perfect to ignore. The vengeful ex, the scorned wife who burned a two-beader empire. He got a meeting. Scarlett, against Arthur's frantic advice, accepted. Blake Donovan was sharp, young, and wore the kind of glasses that were meant to convey intelligence. He sat opposite her in the Eterna Foundation's quiet, book-lined meeting room. Ms. Vance, he began, clicking his pen. This is quite a story. You must understand how it looks. How does it look, Mr. Donovan? Scarlett asked, pouring him a glass of water. It looks personal. You're the ex-wife. Your ex-husband leaves you for a younger woman. He's on the verge of his greatest triumph. And you, sitting on this secret throne of power, you find a problem and annihilate his life's work. It sounds less like ethics and more like hell hath no fury. Scarlett set the pitcher down. She looked him directly in the eye. Do you have the report from Dr. Aris? Yes, I've read it. And did you see the satellite images of the Jamangsim National Forest, the before and the after? Yes, but... And the Eterna Foundation Charter? Section 4, Clause 12. Zero tolerance for fraudulent environmental impact statements. Did you read that? I did, Blake said, shifting, but the timing is the issue. Sources say his new partner, Ms. Stone, contacted you just days before the vote. One source quoted her as, well, as using some extremely derogatory language. She called me street garbage, Scarlett said, her voice neutral. Blake's eyebrows shot up. He hadn't expected her to confirm it. And you're telling me, he pressed, leaning forward, that had nothing to do with your decision, that you, just coincidentally decided to dig into his project at that exact moment? This was the moral center of it, the question she had been asking herself. She leaned forward, mirroring him. No, Mr. Donovan, I'm not telling you that at all. He was clearly surprised. So you admit it was revenge? I admit, Scarlett said, that the insult was a reminder, a very clarifying one. It reminded me exactly who I was dealing with. A man who underestimates, a man who erases, a man who believes everyone and everything is a tool for his own advancement. A man who would cut any corner, tell any lie to get what he wants. She steepled her fingers. For 20 years I was his partner. I knew his brilliance, but I also knew his flaws. Ophelia's call. It reminded me to check his work. It reminded me, in the most vulgar way possible, that Dean Mercer believes rules are for other people. It reminded me to look closer. She pushed the Aris report across the table. And when I looked closer, I didn't find a small lie. I found that. A criminal enterprise. The project was rotten from its roots. The insult wasn't the reason for the decision. The insult was the invitation to check the foundations, and the foundations were poison. Blake Donovan stared at her, then at the report. He was quiet for a full minute. He had come in expecting to write a salacious story about a jealous wife. He was leaving with a much more complex and, frankly, better one. You're not what he painted you as, Blake said, closing his notebook. The nuts and bolts girl. No, Scarlett said, standing up. I'm the architect, and I don't tolerate rotten foundations. Not in my buildings, not in my life. The article that ran 2 days later was not the one she'd feared. The headline was, "The Architect and the Empire, How Scarlett Vance, the unseen partner behind Mercer, reclaimed her name and exposed a global fraud." It wasn't a story of revenge. It was a story of integrity. It painted Dean as the fraud he was, and her as the brilliant, quiet force who had finally, in an act of profound self-respect, stopped him. It detailed the stolen designs, the systematic erasure. It was, in its own way, the truth. The moral weight on her chest eased. The collateral damage, the lost jobs, still pained her. But the article made it clear. The blame for that lay with Dean Mercer, not with the woman who had told the truth. 6 months passed. The Hudson Spire project was officially declared dead. The massive hole in the ground was sold for pennies on the dollar to another developer, who quietly announced plans for a modest, practical, and fully compliant office tower. The scandal had sent a shockwave through the industry, and Eterna compliant became the new buzzword for actually genuinely green. Dean Mercer, facing an overwhelming case, had taken a plea deal. Fraud, conspiracy, money laundering. He was sentenced to 12 years in a minimum security federal prison. His empire, Mercer Developments, the shell companies, the Penthouse, the Amagansett House, had been seized and auctioned off to pay a fraction of the fines and victim restitution. Ophelia Stone, having testified against Dean, received 2 years probation. The last Scarlett heard, she had moved back to Ohio, her name synonymous with the scandal, her brief, glittering life in New York erased as if it had never happened. Scarlett was on a train, heading upstate to visit a sustainable lumber mill. The autumn light was golden, catching the turning leaves of the Hudson Valley. Her phone buzzed. A Google alert for Mercer Developments. It was a small wire service story. Mercer Developments files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, liquidating all remaining assets. It was the final nail. the official end. She felt a pang, not of joy or pity or even closure, just an ending, a quiet, definitive thud, the last echo of a 20-year-long explosion. She was about to put her phone away when a new email appeared. The sender's address made her heart stop for a beat. It was from a generic, prison-issued email service, from D. Mercer, inmate, 8321054ebop.gov. Subject. The body of the email was short, 4 sentences. Scarlett, they let us send emails once a week. I've written this 100 times. You were right. About the timber, about the spire, about everything. I forgot who you were. I'm sorry. Dean. Scarlett read the words, I forgot who you were. This was the confession, not the legal one, but the personal one. This was the admission that he had, in his blind arrogance, erased her from his own memory, and in doing so, had destroyed himself. She found herself thinking of the young, brilliant man she had met at Columbia, the one who dreamed of changing the skyline before the ego and the greed had consumed him. He was still in there, somewhere, buried under the wreckage. She looked out the window at the passing landscape. She thought about replying. What would she even say? Thank you. I know. It's too late. She did none of those things. She simply archived the email. His apology was, for the first time, not for her. It wasn't a tool to get something. It was just his. A thing he needed to say. And she, in turn, was no longer a person who needed to hear it. The train pulled into the small, upstate station. She got off, breathing in the crisp, clean air. It smelled of pine and wet earth. Her phone buzzed one more time. A text from Arthur. It's done. The Red Hook Community Center is officially a Turner-funded, and the city just fast-tracked the permits. They're naming the architectural prize after you. The Vance Grant. Scarlett smiled, a real warm smile that reached her eyes. She walked from the station toward the lumber mill. A new project was beginning. It was small, it was honest, and it was all hers. She was no longer a ghost, no longer a victim, no longer garbage. She was the architect. She had a new foundation to build. 1 year later. The Grand Hall of the New York Public Library was lit in a warm emerald green. The inaugural Eterna Foundation Gala for Ethical Architecture was underway. It was not the stuffy, back-slapping corporate event Dean had so loved. There were no oil executives or hedge fund billionaires. The room was filled with students, academics, young engineers, and scrappy, brilliant architects who were, for the first time, being celebrated not for the height of their buildings, but for the integrity of their materials. Scarlett Vance stood at the podium, a place she once would have avoided at all costs. She was not the support wife, fading into the background in a simple beige dress. Tonight, she wore an architectural deep emerald gown, her hair pulled back, her face confident and clear. She looked unequivocally powerful. "We are taught," she said, her voice steady and warm, carrying over the rapt audience, "that strength is a skyscraper. That power is loud and tall and built of steel and glass. That success is a race to the top, no matter the cost." She paused, looking out at the young faces. "For 20 years I was a nuts and bolts person. I was told my work was in the details, that my ideas were too academic, that I was the anchor, not the sail. I was told that the big picture was the only thing that mattered." She smiled, a small, knowing smile. "But I learned something. The big picture is a lie if the details are rotten. A foundation built on fraud. A life built on a lie. It cannot stand. It doesn't matter how tall it is. It will collapse. True strength," she continued, "is not in the height. It's in the honesty. It's in the materials. It's in the willingness to dig deeper, to check the work, to tell the truth, even when your voice shakes. Don't let anyone big picture you out of your own brilliance. Don't let anyone's ego erase your work. And never ever let anyone make you feel small for caring about the nuts and bolts. The details are the only thing that matter. The details are the foundation. She raised her glass. To the details, to the truth, to the new architects. Build your own damn houses, and build them well. The applause was thunderous. It washed over her, a wave of genuine earned respect. Later, Arthur brought her a glass of champagne. "You've changed, Scarlett," he said, his eyes twinkling. "You're taller, somehow." Scarlett laughed. "No, Arthur. I just finally remembered who I am." She looked across the room. She saw Blake Donovan, the journalist who was now a friend, chatting with the young winner of the first Vance grant, a woman who had designed a self-sustaining water filtration system for a village in Peru. Scarlett was alone, but she was not lonely. She was surrounded by her work, by the future she was funding. She had taken the worst parts of her past, the betrayal, the erasure, the insults, and used them as fuel. She had transformed her pain into a new kind of power, one that didn't just build monuments to an ego, but built a better, more honest world. She sipped her champagne, the victory tasting far sweeter than any revenge. The spire was a hole in the ground. Dean was a number in a system. Ophelia was a ghost. And Scarlett Vance? She was finally the architect of her own life. The insult was meant to be an ending, but she used it as a beginning. Scarlett's story shows that true power isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, but the most honest. She didn't just get revenge, she reclaimed her work, her name, and her integrity, proving that no one can garbage a diamond. What did you think of Scarlett's journey? Was her decision justice or revenge? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you love this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of betrayal and redemption.